Oh, it says up here attendees 0. So
yeah, okay, you can see that.
yeah.
I never know what everybody can see. So yeah. So I'll just keep an eye on that and then look for hands. It may be like our normal meetings where we see very few members of the public, but this is a totally different venue, so we'll see.
Well, I'm so excited. I don't have the to do roll call. I don't have the, maybe I can just go on the website and look for all the names. All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody. It's so great to see your faces on this Zoom. I have really missed being together. Let's start off with our roll call, our call to order. I guess I did that, our roll call. Hold on, let me just pull up. And I will start with, I'll go in alphabetical order. Jeanette Abbey Nader, I am here. Edel Ecton, not here. Chantel Bingham. That was a hand raise, I will note.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Elliot Brown is not here. Phoebe Brown.
Here.
Ernest Chambers.
I am here.
Hi, Ernest.
Hi.
Olivia, I liked your dance, by the way.
Thank you.
Olivia Gabay. Not here. Melvin Grady. Catherine Long.
I'm here.
Susan Lewis.
I'm here.
Andrew Orban. He mentioned he's going to be coming late. Ann Smith. Katherine Speer.
Here.
Right. Matthew Tennant. Lindell Von Schill.
Here.
Hi, Lindell. And Robert Woodside.
I'm here.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for coming for this ad hoc meeting to talk more in depth about the position of the Manager of Human Rights Commission. Let's start by reading the mission together. Does everyone have their agenda with them? I could type it into the notes if you don't have it. Does everyone have it? Yeah? Okay. The Human Rights Commission, ready? Act as a strong advocate to justice and equal opportunity by providing citywide leadership and guidance in the area of civil rights. Okay, thanks. Are there any matters by the public? There's no public.
Nope.
Okay. So I thought we could just start by a brief check-in to recenter our work since it's been so long since we've been together, to just kind of go around and, hi Anne, great. I'd like to note that Anne just joined us at 6:02. It's great to see you. I'm doing my first round at facilitating the subcommittee, and we were just getting to the place about checking in to recenter our work. So I thought we could just take a minute to go around and check in about any human rights work or related justice work that we've been engaged with. Chantal, would you like to start?
Hi, sure. So when are we not doing human rights work? So some of what we've currently been up to has mostly focused on the food space, obviously my job with the Food Justice Network. And so that's been pretty lively. There have been some, matters of just discrimination at some food sites, and we've been working through that. So, without like giving too much information, because I feel like it was a really confidential thing that's happened within our organizations, but we are working on making sure that each resident has, access to food, no matter their background. And we have been supporting that resident if they do want to come to the Office of Human Rights to put in a formal complaint about that. Other things that, you know, I've been keeping my eye on just as a citizen at large, obviously, the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, the police violence that's erupted. I know a lot of us have been sharing on the thread protests to show up and rallies to be at. So I really appreciate our group really just sharing those opportunities with each other. I feel a little heavy almost every day. So I don't feel like I'm working at my optimal capacity all the time. So I am moving a little bit slower, and I appreciate folks, you know, just giving me some space, and then also taking initiative around the letter for the Human Rights Commission. So Phoebe did start drafting a letter of support, a statement of support. So I will work on that tonight and hopefully be able to share it out with the rest of you all before our next Human Rights Commission meeting, which is next Thursday, which is for our general body. So look out for that. Thanks, Jeanette, for giving space for check-ins.
Yeah, thanks. Phoebe, do you want to go next, and then Katherine Speer?
Sure. As Chantel mentioned, I wrote the letter. It's in the public share drive. I didn't share it with anybody except for Chantel. I mean, I didn't like poke anybody except for Chantel and Sue and Catherine because they had replied to the initial thread. But if anybody wants to read it, it's in there. And I am not emotionally tied to anything I said. I just felt like it would be easier if we had something to start with. And then it's much easier to criticize something and fix it than it is to just start from scratch. So we have done that. I went on Monday night. I was out of town with a family emergency this weekend to the protest. And, you know, we have, my husband and I have been working on like a variety of different ways to support our community. And that's it.
Thank you, Phoebe. Katherine Speer, and then Sue Lewis.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to offer, thank you to Phoebe for starting a draft, but Chantel, I know there's a lot on your plate and in your presence right now. So I'm absolutely happy to spend my evening this evening working on it. Whatever you need, know that I'm here to help support with that. And so I think in terms of social justice, part of what I've been trying to do is use my voice and take action. Primarily, the focus has been first for my team at UVA for their health and well-being. I'm doing this work, particularly the Black members of my team who are disproportionately impacted always, but by this, particularly the recent events. But also for the broader community at UVA, and trying to work to ensure an equity lens is included in all the important decisions that are being made. So that's where my primary focus has been, also not related to the recent events, but also an important topic that's impacting more in the higher education space, but definitely an equity issue that can impact loved ones, community members who might be involved as witnesses, have relatives that are involved in situations as employees or students at UVA, is that the US Department of Education issued new Title IX regulations with significant changes. So a lot of my equity work and focus has been on that right now. And again, Jeanette, I thank you for hosting this and for taking the time to do check-ins. It's really wonderful to see all of you, and please be well.
Did you call on me next?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And then Lindell for next.
Okay. As an old retired person, I don't get out doing much in the way of outside the building, although I do go to a couple of things. I spend most of my time doing Zoom meetings. And but the one thing I'm doing in the social justice area is just simply my granddaughter and daughter and I are delving heavily into issues of white supremacy and anti-racism. We have read white fragility, and we have just finished how to be an anti-racist, and we're starting reading Me and White Supremacy. So we're doing our own thing in terms of making sure that we know what the issues are in social justice, and hopefully we are putting them into practice when we come in touch with other people.
Thank you. Lindell and then Ernest, for those who just joined, we're just doing brief check-ins on how we've been doing and what kind of work we've been focused on. And I will note that Andy Orban joined at 6:08.
Andy, hi everyone. So it's really good to see everyone, and thank everyone for the work that they've done preparing for this meeting. In the social justice realm, what I've been trying to do is focus on, I've showing up at a few protests, doing a lot of online support work, both locally in Richmond and elsewhere in the country. And really focusing at work. I mean, my job really is this. We've really been working a lot with the students this summer because they're scattered all over the country. Most of them are Black, Indigenous, people of color. They're having a pretty stressful time, as you can imagine. It's pretty tough. And so we've been working a lot trying to provide community and support as much as we can. And at work, we've had some really great conversations and actions. We participated in the call for physics strike yesterday. We had some really great conversations today and got some consensus among the 100 of the 400 people who work for us to work towards becoming an anti-racist organization and adopting that as our goal. So, lots of different things, but lots of work to do.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Ernest and then Robert.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Conversations with organizations that I'm a part of and just other individuals have been very interesting, I would say the least. Being an African-American male and trying to make sure that you are trying to make sure people listen and not to be overbearing. I haven't made it to any events as of yet at this time. It's my plan to do so. With school being done, I don't have that pressure anymore of online learning with kids, but also doing a lot of listening and watching of everything that's going on to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. I think it's going to be very crucial for us when statute work begins to happen with City Council and in support of those things that are coming down the pipe. I appreciate you guys and anyone that's out there doing the work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Give me a holler. If you don't see me, come grab me. I love to march with you, be with you, and those type of things, and even talk with you. Okay, so that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Ernest. Robert, and then Ann.
I similar to Ernest, haven't done much except for a lot of listening and reading before events of the last few weeks spurred up. Did a lot of stuff through church, specifically helping out some food and diaper drives and a few other things set up specifically for the Southwood trailer park. We have a lot of connections to our church there. wife and I were still able to keep our jobs. So we were actually able to keep our nanny on without, even though she didn't work for us, we were able to, because we are her only source of income. There we go. So we were able to still pay her during all that. So she's now back with us, which is great. It was really nice that we were able to keep her job. She's a single mom. So able to keep her employed was really nice. And then since we felt like we didn't really need the stimulus money, we didn't. We did a variety of ways of helping out. We bought some beers for the local journalists who were furloughed, and tried to just eat out, or we donated a lot of it to our church's mercy fund. So that's about it.
Thank you, Rob. Anne, and then Andy.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see you all and see that everybody has remained safe. As far as checking in with me, I, of course, have kept abreast of all the situations and that have gone on, been doing a lot of reading. But like Sue, I haven't really been out much. So it's just been conversations on the phone, showing support, listening to others and things like that. And, you know, trying to move forward and trying to help as much as possible.
Thank you. Andy, and then Catherine Lowe.
Sure. Good to see y'all. I think the big thing, once mid-March hit and the kids were home, that was kind of a huge, kind of reshuffling for a family. I have 3 kids all in the city schools, so that's definitely been something that's taken attention. But more recently, been focused on the school budget and this SRO funding. So it's good to see that the city schools have responded to the community input about that and making that change. Was able to get out to a couple of the marches, so it's nice to see the community out and see the huge attendance and interest in speaking out about police violence. So I'm glad to see our community coming together.
Catherine, you're on the phone? Or are you on, but just no video?
I am not on the phone. To be honest, I've been quite ill, so I have my video muted so you don't have to look at me. And in fact, I think I might have overestimated my capacity and I may slip out here in a minute. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing my job and trying to take care of my students and involved in some of the mutual aid efforts. If any of you are working with people who need medications, we have about $20,000 to use to spend on copays for medications for anybody who lives in the Thomas Jefferson Health District. And that's what we've been doing.
Thanks, Catherine. Please take, call bag off when you need to.
Thanks.
Of course. Todd, how are you?
Thanks for asking. I'm doing okay. I feel really fortunate to be able to continue to do the work of the office from various locations within my house. I was asked by the Department of Human Services to help with the emergency relief work, and that was a nice honor. Got to talk to a lot of Spanish-speaking residents. And that's ongoing. So still following up with a lot of people to make sure that the assistance that our local governments have promised is getting to the people who have requested it. But yeah, we're doing okay, and yeah, certainly keeping an eye on all that's going on and trying to contribute where I can.
Thank you. I think I'm the last commissioner, but I'm as Chantel said, we're doing the work around coordinating with emergency food at Cultivate Charlottesville. We launched our new name. I'm really humbled and grateful to see all of you, and just really aware of the weight of the activities that have been happening, the events that have been happening, and the blatant racism that we've been experiencing. So grateful for work to move forward in my own organization, as well as the, the actual active growing piece, as well as the advocacy piece. So just engaging in that. I just want to call attention that we have 2 attendees. We had already left it open for matters by the public, but please raise your hand if you have something you want to share. I wondered if folks would feel interested in doing a moment of silence before we jump in. As much as I'd like to, it's really good to hear how each of you are and to show up, and then also just to create space for those who have lost their lives to police brutality, to our peers, our coworkers, some of you here on the call who have been bearing the weight of this as Black Americans. So if we could just take a minute to have a moment of silence in honor of them. Thank you, everyone. So as I mentioned at the beginning, today's meeting is really to focus on the preparation for a meeting with City Council, which I don't know, Todd, has that been set, or do we still need to do that, right?
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten any communication from the clerk's office in that regard, but I can certainly follow up if you'd like.
Okay. Originally, they had put it on hold for July. So to prepare for that meeting around the hiring of the Human Rights, the Office of Human Rights Manager. So any changes to the agenda before we jump right in? Okay. We talked about first looking at the role in the charter of the commission to just sort of check in on where we're at with that. And I had, is it possible to share my screen, Todd?
That's a good question. I was trying to make you a host. I believe Chantel and I are listed as co-hosts currently.
Yeah, you can make her a co-host, and then she'll be able to share.
Oh, please tell me how.
Go to, if you just click next to my name on the more, I think that'll allow you to do that.
Thanks. I can't find one that says change it to co-host. There's
okay.
Look below that where it says raise hand, and well, there should be just below the list of participants. There might even be another set of ellipses.
You could have a share screen button too at the end that like gives you an option to add, but maybe not. Maybe that's just for you.
Okay, I can read these just as a starting place. I thought it would be helpful to focus on the ordinance, where we started and ground ourselves in the purpose. And so just reading the Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance is part of the city code, which define how human rights are protected within the city. It also specifies the role of the Office of Human Rights and the Commission in enforcing these protections. The Human Rights Ordinance states, it shall be unlawful and a violation of this article for any person, partnership, corporation, or other entity to engage in discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodations, credit, and education on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, national origin, age, marital status, or disability. Thank you, Chantel. And yeah, so that's there. And then it continues to speak to what are the rights of human, if you want to just like scroll down a little bit, I think, yeah. So here, thank you. This is great, the Human Rights Commission. And then do you have a piece that speaks to the office itself, any more information about that? Duties and, is that? Okay, so the duties and responsibilities, the director will develop and implement a central intake mechanism for receiving and processing individual complaints that allege an unlawful discriminatory practice in the city. I'll let you read this next paragraph. I just wanted to revisit these core functions as we look at the job description.
And I will say clearly there are additions on here.
So are those yours, Chantel, or?
These are additions that were emailed to me I think our commission as a whole, by Walt Heineke, I believe, or a body of people. Walt sent them on behalf of a group of social justice organizations. So
any track changes are
not in the ordinance. Yeah, they're
great. Thank you.
And
Interrupt. I do have the original one with no edits pulled up now if you would like me to put that one up instead.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful just to see what the original is.
yes, please.
I don't think these additions are too bad though. I'm stopping screen share.
Would like
It'll be
to
good to
see
look.
just what, I mean, I have a great deal of concern about those additions. They are not in the original and we need to talk about what's in the original.
Yeah. Well, today our focus isn't so much on the ordinance as, on
Okay,
how
there,
that applies to the job description.
It's very short. It's under section 432.
Yeah, he has it pulled up here, Sue.
F.
Okay. You want to scroll down, please, Todd?
Yes. Which one are you looking for? I'm sorry.
Just to scroll down. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
And F, section F, talks about the director. You've gone too far.
Okay.
You go back up to 432.
Oh, okay.
There we go. In order to fulfill the requirements of this section, the city,
And it's section F where it talks about the full-time director of the commission.
Okay. If I see something different than you do, I
You're
apologize.
still not at 432.
it's above a little bit.
Okay. This one? Can you see it now?
432, you're still not there.
Okay. That was where I'm not.
You're
seeing the screen.
close.
That's
You're
it.
close.
You're there.
Right there.
There you go.
Okay,
There shall
yeah.
be a full-time director of the commission who shall be appointed by the city manager with the advice and consent of the commission and who shall serve full-time. Todd, do you want to just read it? Because it's moving
Yeah,
around.
it's bumping.
Section F.
Yeah. why
2-40.
around? I mean, I've got it in front of me. I can read it.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay. There shall be a full-time director of the commission who shall be appointed by the city manager with the advice and consent of the commission and who shall serve full-time in that capacity. The director will be responsible for and report to the commission in the day-to-day operational conduct of the commission's activities. The director shall report directly to the city manager for administrative and fiscal matters. The city manager shall delegate to the director the authority to employ such additional staff as authorized and funded by the city council in order for the commission to fulfill effectively its obligations under this ordinance. That is the only thing that speaks to what the job description of the director is.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So perhaps it would be good to just jump right into the job description and speak to that. Or does anyone want to comment overall on the process of hiring someone?
I'd like to know what the process actually is right now.
Do you know, Todd?
So based on what I've been told by Letitia Shelton, they are not in the hiring process right now. She has not given me an update yet, nor has Dr. Richardson as to when they are going to restart the hiring process. But all I've been told so far is that that is on hold. So that's all I know.
So I think that can be part of our recommendation. If we have a timeline that we'd like to suggest when they start the process and, you know, when someone be in place by. So B, what we see here is a recommendation for our agenda when we meet with City Council. Are there any comments on that section on points 1, 2, and 3 that look at the different things we might review with council when we meet with them for the agenda?
Those look like perfectly legitimate ways to go about dealing with our connection to City Council and the manager. I like the way you've written them up.
Could we briefly maybe, so there's substance there, what are our goals for, you know, reviewing the role and charter of the commission? What's the overall goal of that? What do we hope to achieve? Are there things about our role as a commission or within the ordinance that we think should be changed? Like, just discussion around any of all those things.
This is Ann. I have a question for Jeanette. She was looking at a list of things and I don't have that in front of me. Is there any way that could be shared?
It's on the agenda.
Sure, I'll pull it
I
up.
don't have the agenda in front of me. I'm sorry.
That's okay, we can pull it up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And as a point of clarification, are we, this Office of Human Rights Manager, the position, the general summary, is this something that we can suggest edits to?
Yeah, I think we're going to work on that next.
Okay,
so
great.
I just wanted to get a sense of like, okay, so this right here that I'm showing now, this section, sorry, this 1, 2, and 3, these 3 things are recommendations for the agenda. And we can switch it around if you guys would rather look at the job description first. But the point B on our work session is the outline of the agenda when we meet with the HR commission. With the City Council. So we would meet with them, we would talk about our relationship with them first, review the role of the charter, discuss the protocol for check-ins, follow up with feedback, and then we would look at the director position, review a timeline. We could come with a suggested timeline, review the job description. That's when we would come with suggestions to the job description, and then understand the role of our role in the hiring process.
If I could speak to number 1, review role and charter of the commission, and Chantel's interest in a goal. I thought when we started this process, there was a feeling that particularly new council people didn't have a clue what we were all about, and that part of our reason to review the role and charter of the commission is to bring them up to speed with what's actually in there. And if I'm wrong, fine, correct me, but I thought that was basically the goal initially, is to make sure that they know what it's all about.
Are you speaking about the new city councilors?
Well, that's who we'll be meeting with.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason in my brain, I was like, is she talking about our commission as a whole and like the potential new commissioners that'll be coming on? Yeah, I think that is one goal. I guess there have been feedback and suggestions from the greater public that has been emailed to our commission. And I do believe this is something that's going to be on our meeting next week. That I briefly shown and by accident, but the comments that folks are sending in, you all should have gotten that like a couple months ago when it had happened. And then we had that meeting that got canceled in March. Todd, is that correct that all those things were shared out, right?
Yeah.
all the minutes from those meetings?
The minutes, but then also, you know, the comments on the charter of the Human Rights Commission. There was also feedback sent around the role of the director or the manager for the Office of Human Rights. And
Yes, that was sent to the city attorney's office, I believe. Is that correct?
yeah, it was sent to the
Probably
city.
on that.
Yeah. And so that stuff, I just want to just clarify that all that stuff is just going to be on our agenda for our large group general meeting. And we're not going to discuss any of that tonight here.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. I just noticed your hand was raised, Phoebe. I'm sorry. I don't know how long it was raised.
I've now totally forgotten whatever I was going to say. Sorry. I'll
have
take
the box.
a note. Yeah, I'll take a note next time.
I have the box up now. Catherine, go ahead. Spear.
Thanks. So Chantel, I know you just said, I think that we're not going to talk about this, but I'm just like going forward like tonight, because we're going to talk about it next week, which makes sense. But, you know, Justin, looking at, because I think what originally, Jeanette, you were talking about was directing our attention to that B1 little I 1 through 3.
Mhm.
I just, you know, an opportunity, and I, you know, this is probably something that maybe was shared with us before, but if I may not be understanding this correctly, but to me, I would just want to state it in ways like I think language is important. So, you know, it's reviewing the role, like to Sue's point, we're educating, so the scope of the responsibilities and the charter of the commission, but also I think tied with that is the role of the director of the Office for Human Rights because of their critical tie and support for this commission. And then you know, this harkens back to our last in-person meeting that I was at. This discussed the protocol for regular check-ins. I think language is important if we're putting this forward to the council or to the attorney that there's mandated protocols for check-ins. So I think we want to be affirmative and what we want to see happen. And then just suggesting as we go forward, and I think we're going to talk about this more next week, I think it's not just follow-up, it's establishing a framework. But I just think that, you know, one other thing we want to think about is the coordination with CRB. And I don't know if that's appropriate to put in one of the goals, but I wanted to mention it here because I know they've had challenges and meeting. And
Sorry.
I know a lot of what we were doing with our work, and I don't know if this is appropriate time to say it, but I'm just going to say it now, which is we sidelined a lot of the effort that we were doing around constructive feedback to our law enforcement around their policies, waiting for the CRB and wanting to work collaboratively with the CRB. So anyway, I just throw that out there now, but I think language is important. And so I really think we want to be really assertive, professional and collaborative, but assertive in how we frame our asks.
I appreciate that. We can make note and change that. So discuss protocol for mandated check-ins, as well as, was there another phrase we could add to that?
I like mandated.
Yeah, me too. And then I think
and then the other was like establishing a framework for the follow-up for and I'm not sure what we mean by feedback, or if are we talking about collaborative? Like I'm not, you know, that one for me, I'm not sure exactly what the intention was around that. And then I don't know if this is an opportunity, but I do think not only with city council, I think the question out there for me is how is this commission connected to the CRB and how can we partner and amplify one another's efforts? Because I think that there should be a lot of common ground between the goals of the CRB and the HRC.
What do you all think about putting that down under point 3? Review the policy priorities, the Human Rights Commission feedback for the council. So what we've already shared with them and then potential next steps.
I second that.
My concern is if we have it at the top, we might get off topic. We could really get into a big discussion about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we should raise since I think Katherine Lawn and I were both on maybe Katherine Speer. I think a lot of us were on the policing ad hoc subcommittee, but I think that is something we should raise. But I think there are a lot more direct things that we should bring up with council before we get to that. And that that could get weedy really, really quickly.
Okay.
But,
Go ahead, Chantel, sorry.
Rob, could you just like say a little bit more about what you mean by weedy?
I mean, there's a lot of specifics that we don't know, that council may not know, that how we're supposed to work with CRB. And so that could be that might be just a full city a full joint commission city council meeting in and of itself. And so I think it would be important to first look at stuff that's the first hill instead of something that might be a few hills later. I think it's something that we need at least to raise, certainly. But if we lead with that, that could take up that. I feel like that has the potential to take up most of the time of a joint commission city council meeting in and of itself. So if we want other things like hiring a director, our general relationship with the city government and the city council, since that is something that we've already kind of had problems with in a while, I think those things need to be front and center. And then maybe at the end, if we have time, when we have time to get to it, at least raise that issue. How can what's the bridge for Human Rights Commission and the CRB?
Okay.
I think based on
Good job on that.
what you all shared, it might also be helpful to have slides that we could look at that outlines what our mandate is and what the role, for me, it's so much, especially if we're on Zoom, it might be helpful to have that visual reminder. So if y'all are in support of that, I can work on drafting those and we can review them beforehand.
I'm still kind of stuck a little bit on the HRC and CRB discussion. Okay. And I don't want to, whatever, I'm just going to say it. I do, specifically in this moment in time, all of our work is going to be infused with matters concerning public safety. I mean, that's part of, as Katherine had brought up earlier, we did sideline our work reviewing policing policies. And I do think if we want to be a more assertive commission and, make the argument to city council that you're now you've created a spot for the CRB to come here, come into fruition. And you're also thinking about an office of equity, discussions around all the HRC, OHR, Office Department of Equity and Inclusion in CRB as an infrastructural body that's going to help our city to do equity work and justice work and fairness work is really important. And I think we do need to create space for that. It doesn't have to take up a whole conversation with city council, but I think that they also are wondering what is the purpose of the Human Rights Commission? What have you guys done? How are you really, an effective body? And we should reflect on that, I think, prior to it, and maybe also reach out to the CRB prior to any of this stuff and start to build out that conversation already. I do think it is worth definitely having it in the agenda. I personally don't think the management relationship role is going to take up a lot of time. It could, but I really don't see those first two nuggets taking up a lot of time, especially because the city knows that this is important. And I'm pretty sure as soon as we say hey, what's your time? Can you give us a timeline for hiring the Human Rights Commission director or manager? They'll probably be pretty responsive because of the moment that we're in right now. So if we can create more media parts for the joint session, I think that's actually going to be really helpful for us long term, and just clarify what we do in general and what our relationship should be for the new CRB as well.
And just really quickly, I know I have my hand up, Jeanette. So very quickly on what Chantel was saying, for this group, right, am giving as an example that we did a lot of work around policing policies, both the bias policy and then just broader general recommendations through that ad hoc work. And we're ready to do it. And we said, hey, we'll wait, right, for the CRB. So I'm just saying that was an example of work that we're ready and poised to start the conversation again and move forward. As an example of just to crystallize kind of what Chantel was saying is what is the relationship? So I'm not suggesting at all that we go in an adversarial tone, but I think it's really important to Chantel's point. Chantel also brought up the equity office that's being created. So it's not just as the CRB and the HRC, it's the HRC, the CRB, the Equity Center. And coming from an institution that has a lot of different entities trying to do the same work, there's a lot of power in impact and positive impact that can come from solidifying around a common goal and purpose and vision and aligning where there are overlaps that work. And so I do think it would be really important, and I think it dovetails nicely with a conversation about filling permanently the director for the Office for Human Rights and the role of the commission, but also these other groups, that we will help the city, right? This is going to be helpful to them. This is something that's going to help move them forward in a time where, quite frankly, a lot of municipalities and places are already stepping up to be leaders. And who better to be a leader in this space than the city of Charlottesville? So again, I'm not suggesting that we put it out in a contentious way, but it seems like a piece that when I was reading those 3 bullets, this logically was like the 4th one. And I appreciate Chantel mentioned the equity office, because I think it's sort of the vision for how do we create that Venn diagram that brings all of those different offices doing social justice work together.
In terms of the agenda and how it looks, do you all think, like Katherine, when you were talking, it made me think that maybe that would be made me change my mind. I think maybe that would be a place to start. Like, how do these all link together before we get into the specifics of the manager, to like make the pitch. This is part of a cohesive system. The city has this opportunity. And we're suggesting a change from human rights manager to human rights director, right? I'm hearing that in the way you're speaking and assuming we talked about that in the past. Mm-hmm. And then going in after we've laid that foundation that there's this interconnected bodies within the city, and then we go into the details. So maybe bump that piece back up.
I like the theme. I'll defer to you all, but the one thing I will also say for me personally, the title isn't the place. It's not the hill to die on. Like, I mean,
right.
It needs authority, right? It needs authority and support and resources and to matter, right? Like to not be a figurehead, to not just be sidelined, to use a word that we've already used, right? It's an important position. And the reason why it's important is it's an extension. I mean, it's great that the city has that. And it's great. A lot of cities don't have civilian review boards. So good, have one, implement it, right? And then what is that? And a lot of cities don't have equity offices. So what does that mean? Yeah, and I think starting with overarching themes and saying we're here to help is never a bad place to start.
Okay. Phoebe had to go. I don't know if y'all saw that. Sure, kid was hurt. All right, so just looking at the agenda again, then after we look at the agenda, we'll move on to looking at the specifics of the job description. We can, we haven't clarified too many goals yet, so if anyone has thoughts or suggestions on what those would look like, but we would look at the goals for the meeting, review the role and charter of the commission and the manager as it currently is, discuss the mandate that we have for check-ins and the other protocols, the framework for our relationship with the council and management, speak to the broader picture of how the city has these 3 bodies and how the Office of Human Rights has an opportunity to be a leader and to help coordinate and coalesce. Does that sound good for like the first introductory piece of the meeting? The second piece would be to focus on the manager position, which we'll get into in a minute. And then third, follow up with like a review of, okay, these are the proposals, the documents that we've already shared with you. And then maybe we should add a 4th piece on next steps, really, to get it clear on where we're going to go after this. Does that sound good for the overarching piece before we get into the specifics? Okay. I miss you guys.
I'm
It's so
actually lost. You know, I'm a visual person.
yeah.
And without it in front of me, I haven't a clue what you just said.
I'm sorry. I can share my screen again. Brian, was there a reason why, Todd, it was suggested that I not share it? Is it important to see all of us?
I'm not sure exactly. Brian just mentioned it in the chat. Maybe it's just some sort of presentation piece, but I think you can share again if it's necessary.
Okay. Thank you. So what we're saying is right here in this section,
yes,
we still have this, but we add to it stronger language around what is the mandate. We add to it some clear goals for the meeting today. And then we add like maybe section 2 is we add a section before we get into the specifics of the director position that talks about the opportunity in front of us, about the 3 departments, the Office of Inclusion and Equity. Is that the right name, Chantel, I think? Or Todd, do you know what they're going to be calling it?
I believe that's correct. Equity and inclusion.
And I thought they took that out of the budget. They're not planning to set one up this year, as far as in the upcoming year, as far as I can tell. They put that whole thing on hold, the last I read.
That's not the information I had, but we can definitely double check it. Siri Russell, I was talking with her yesterday, said that the city was getting ready to hire. So that could be a rumor, but I'm pretty sure it's not. Siri is the director of the Office of Equity Inclusion for the Albemarle County, but we should definitely check in with that if Todd has information.
No problem.
Okay. And the Civilian Review Board. And so that would go as number 2 would be to talk about the overall bodies in city government that are looking at equity issues and how they could coordinate and what role the manager may play in that. Does that make more sense, Sue? Okay. All right, so next phase, we'll talk about this section, which will become the 3rd section, the timeline, the job description, and what is our role. So do you all want to recommend, I know we don't know yet what the timeline is. Do you want to recommend a timeline? I just saw Lindell's note. Thank you, Lindell. They have to leave at 7. I think it would be great to, I mean, Todd, how is your workload? I think it would be at a minimum to say by the end of the calendar year. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, you know, I welcome the sooner the better. That's fine. There's much more we can do when we have additional people. Just if this is helpful, I had a conversation today with Allison Davies in the city attorney's office because I wanted to make sure I had some updates because I didn't know what all had been set in motion prior to Charlene's departure. And I asked about the FIPA application, for example, and she noted that there basically was no forward progress because we don't have enough staff at this point to even think about it. So if that's a point of reference, it's limiting until we do have the adequate staffing.
If I could say something, that's all right.
Yeah, please.
I know I met with Heather Hill. I think, Andy, did you able to meet with Heather about just pressing on council and city manager to get a director hired? No, he's typing. Anyway, I know a few of us have met with city council members about.
Yeah, I did meet with her. I'll have to go back and check my notes.
Okay.
That was a while ago.
So I mean, I think if coronavirus hadn't hit and put on both the brakes and the parking brake at the same time, we might have actually been able to maybe get someone hired by the summer. But yeah, I think I mean, I don't know how the wheels of hiring in city government go, but I mean, if we could get something up and posted, I think it's has to be up for 6 weeks, something like that, for a public position for that. So I don't know. Yeah, I would love ASAP. whatever
The
that.
end of the year seems unrealistic then if it has to be posted for 6 weeks. Because it'll probably take 3 months after that to interview and,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
October 1st, maybe? Is that too long? Like
October 1st.
September 1st, October 1st, June, July, August, September 1st, maybe? Or the middle of September?
For what? For listing it?
No, for having it filled.
Oh, well, if our meeting's not till July, I don't.
Oh,
think
it's not till, no way.
Yeah.
And they won't move forward like until they meet with us? Like there's no way for us to, like one would think they're not waiting. Are they waiting for the meeting to post the position?
I don't think they are. I mean,
Right. I mean,
Arlene,
can't we get them our feedback on the position description and say, please post, and then we'll meet? And
yeah. I can't remember when Charlene's exact last day was, but wasn't it like around February, or the end of February or March? So I
I
mean,
bet
just
Todd remembers.
yeah,
That's correct.
whatever that day was, I would feel like, you know, even if say it's February, like a 6-month vacancy,
Yeah.
just in terms of like, are you really committed to having your city do justice and fairness work if you have a 6-month vacancy for an office that only had 2 staff members?
Yeah.
Is not okay. So I would just say as soon as
Yeah.
possible. I mean, it's been a while. I wish I could remember the day. We could definitely find the date of when Charlene left, but it shouldn't take them.
February 24th.
Sorry, what?
Go ahead, Todd.
I believe it was February 24th.
Yeah.
It sticks in my mind. Just one clarifying point. You're talking about advocating to council for this, and I believe we should check on this, but I believe it's city manager it's city manager's role to sort of
Right.
authorize that hiring thing forward, and so city council would therefore talk to the city manager about how important that would be.
Yeah.
My assumption.
Question,
Go ahead, Ernest.
this is Ernest. Is the city under a hiring freeze? I know we've hired a new director of Parks and Rec and that type of thing, but are we under a hiring freeze, or how can we push that if the city is not hiring folk? So that would be my question, because I would want to know if we are under a hiring freeze or we're not hiring anyone, then I would say that whenever that is lifted, then we would get on that within the month to have that posted,
Yeah.
to do whatever we need to do and have that hopefully done 2 or 3 months after that.
Yeah. Thank you, Ernest. Todd, my assumption was that when we meet with City Council, Dr. Richardson will also be there. That it's the city manager and City Council. Is that accurate?
I would hope so. I don't know if we got a clear answer to that, but that seems to be typically what happens.
Okay. So maybe one of the first things we do is after this meeting, send them an invitation to meet. Should that come from Chantel or from the office, from you?
That's a great question. I think because it's a commission initiative, it would be fine for Chantel to send it. If I can facilitate that in any way, I'm happy to do so, but I'm certain that you could make that happen as well.
And this will be what number invitation we have sent to the city manager to meet with us? At least 2, maybe 3, maybe 4.
Guys, I have to go because I have back-to-back Zoom meetings. Thank you. I look forward to reading the minutes.
Rob, if you have comments on the description, please go ahead and send those in.
I actually do not. I thought the description was very thorough. But thank you. I will see you guys later.
Well, I'd be happy to help. Oh, go ahead, Linda. You have to go.
I'm going to say goodbye too. Thank you for this really great work. Everything I've heard so far sounds fantastic. Thank you for all this work.
Thank you. I can help draft that if that would be useful, Chantel. an outreach to the city council, or if you would just prefer to do that directly?
If you would love, I would love if you draft an email. I'm happy to.
Okay,
Less work. So thanks, Jeanette.
sure. All right, let's get into the meat of it around the position description itself. Did folks have comments? We could just, if people read it and they have comments, we could just go around and share what your specific comments were. Or we could walk through and look at each piece and share comments together. Actually, maybe that I might suggest that we do that. I'll share it. Does that sound like an okay process? Okay. So starting with the title, Office of Human Rights Manager, I think that there was consensus that we suggest they call it a director. Do you know, Todd, what effect that has on the salary range, if any?
I have no idea as to the effect of that.
So let's just look at the general summary. Any thoughts or feedback on that piece?
Only a minor comment that with professional and managerial level at the very beginning, I think it's important to perhaps put in leadership, because I think that's essential, right? You're looking for a leader in this position. Not simply a professional or manager, but they need to have that extra something.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Catherine. But other than, sorry,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it feels, pretty run of the mill. I know that we had suggestions prior to seeing this, and I feel like those suggestions didn't really refer to the job description. Now that I'm looking back at them, it's more of like recommendations for what type of person we'd want to see in that role.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so adding leadership. Is there a place where those suggestions are collected? I neglected to go back and look through those. I don't recall where they are.
They are in the drive. I can send them to you. They're in the shared drive folder.
Okay. Well, I can find them if they're in there. Catherine, you're shaking your head. You saw them in there. Yeah. Okay.
I should say, I don't know if all the comments are, but I think the original document for us I think it's all in. It's been a while because I know we saw this a while back. So yeah. And if not, it can be put in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think it would be useful if I pulled that document up now so we can see the comments that were made?
I don't know if it would necessarily add to it.
Okay.
But
all right. And we can follow up as well. Like once we take notes from today's comment, we can include that back into the drive for folks to have other people to have comments before we meet with them. How about moving on to the essential responsibilities and duties? Did anyone have any feedback here?
Just again, it might be like administers, leads and coordinates activities. And I'm going to defer because I think Sue was starting to speak. Go ahead, Sue.
That's okay. Towards the bottom of the first page of those, since the bullets aren't numbered, I can't tell you the number, but recommends amendments and additions to the Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance. I was intrigued with that. I didn't know that that was a responsibility of the director manager. So I kind of highlighted that. Just a little editing. Investigates allegations of discrimination is in twice. And then the receives and reviews initial complaints, conducts intake conferences. I thought that was the job of I thought that was Todd's job.
I think this was written when there wasn't a second position.
Well, except they just did this, didn't they? Is this the original Office of Human Rights Manager?
This was revised July 30th, 2015.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, those were my comments on that first essential responsibilities and duties. And the little editing there, conducts intake conferences, conducts period blank.
Yeah.
I,
So adding
really,
something
I
like,
really hate it when something comes out of a governmental office and has mistakes like that. I expect better.
This is Ann. I have a question in regards to the statement. I think Sue brought it up, recommends amendments and additions to the Charlottesville Human Rights Ordinance. Wouldn't that be something that comes from the commission itself? And then the director or manager would go on and share that with the city council or city management? But wouldn't we be the ones that initiate it?
That was my question.
I just asked it again, Sue, because I was unclear about it.
If this was done that in 2015, and the right person could, in fact, I guess it's to whom does this person recommend the amendments and additions?
Mm-hmm.
If that person recommends amendments and additions to the ordinance to the commission, which then, carries them forward, or does this person go straight, do not pass go, and go straight to council and ask for amendments and additions? That's I think why I got concerned about that.
So I agree. That does make, we do need to answer that question.
Here's my thinking on that, is that this was probably something written by or for that manager to bring to us from information that they might have gotten from attending different Human Rights Commission things around the state or around the country, that they thought something that they saw or heard, that's something we might want to add or amend in ours, is what I'm reading into this.
I agree, Ernest. I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a question to whom do those recommendations go? Directly to council for additions or amendments, or through the Human Rights Commission itself to say, yeah, we think that's a great idea.
Well, can we make an adjustment to that to make sure that it is brought to us and then to city council if it needs to go to city council?
If we're going to come up with, some changes to this thing, I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing to do, that particular one. I don't see anything wrong with the rest of the stuff, but if we can clarify to whom that goes, I think it's not a bad idea. So are we going to be making our own changes to this office manager director job description from July 15th? Are we going to be doing that? Is that the whole point of this?
yes,
Thank
that
you.
when we meet with them, we come with.
Okay, then I would definitely make a note that needs to be clarified to whom this person makes those recommendations.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ernest.
Sorry. And then Catherine, you were going to suggest about the leadership piece, adding to make it reflect what was above. Is that what you started to say earlier?
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking anywhere we're just kind of using the more, standard administers, coordinates, manages. Like I think leadership is like adding it in wherever we say administers, like administered, comma, leads, comma, and coordinates, or, just wherever we can sort of pepper that concept of leadership. into the job description. So a very minor tweak suggestion. Thank you.
I had a question. One thing that Charlene did was, that's beyond anything here, was really act as a thought leader and guide for the whole community around human rights. And I wondered if we wanted to include anything like that that goes beyond the actual duties, you know, but really sets the tone. Sorry, I got something in my throat.
Doesn't some of the later things speak to that, like the organizational competencies and the job family competencies? I think there's a certain amount of stuff in there that spoke to me of leadership and team building and various things, including outside the organization itself.
Well, there is one bullet point that says develops and disseminates human rights literature. And I feel as though some of what Jeanette is speaking to around thought leadership and some of the things that Charlene did around the history and just like understanding the root causes of discrimination and the historical significance of it would be, we should definitely add language in there somewhere. Human rights literature just seems very broad and vague, and I think thought leadership probably speaks more to how Charlene was and how she carried out that bullet point. So maybe that's the recommendation around that bullet point. I also had a question just in reviewing, you know, the CRB, and they have one, not only the CRB, but the housing click and others do at least one, you know, large study a year on discrimination. And I'm wondering if, you know, with the reports that Todd, you put together on the OHR contact, if there's any way that we could just expand that work and dig a little deeper, and maybe suggest that this person also may work to get studies. Maybe it's not their direct office that's doing it, but collaborating with, it could be the University of Virginia, you know, different offices there, so that we do maintain some type of research or report that's put out on a yearly or biannual basis on, you know, just discrimination that has gone on in the area. So I just wanted to see how people felt about that. There is a bullet point that speaks to reports. It's very vague. There's no mention of equity at all in any of this, racial equity or, you know, any of those things. So I would love to see more language around there, just so there's a thread moving through all of the offices that we seek. Well, racial equity should be in any office and department in the city of Charlottesville, period. Just regardless. So I would like to see some language there, or at least understanding, people should come with that once we move to the skills and experience section.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I agree. And there may be some language to pull, just looking at, it wasn't that long ago that UVA posted for Kevin McDonald's position, the vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's probably some language in there, but I know just in hiring in our office, we are always put something in there around the commitment to diversity and equity and having a demonstrated commitment. And so, there could be some language that we could pull and put in there. Obviously, I think that's probably not something we can do in real time right now. But if we had a deadline, deadlines are always good for me, especially now, to say by this date, if people could provide additional input into a Word document, not a PDF, but a Word document in the Google Drive. I think that would be important. Just maybe we could identify the themes, the areas where we would leadership, equity, and some of the other points that Sue made, where we want to sort of bolster the description.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed that Charlene did a lot of that wasn't really in here was around community engagement and outreach. And I wondered if that would be another category that we might want to add.
I like that, Jeanette, because I think it talks about training, but it's very inward facing, like train staff versus that sort of outreach and education. That seems like a very big piece of what she did and really an important part of the service to the community.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for essential responsibilities and duties?
Sorry, I'm also just remembering that as of July 1, LGBTQ will be a protected, right?
Yeah.
July 1, that would be protected class. So just remembering to update not only our ordinance, but also, or not only this description, but also the ordinance on adding that gender in there.
Great.
It's already in the ordinance.
Sorry, what?
It's already in the ordinance. We could check the language, but I think it's been a protected class in the human rights ordinance since the writing of the ordinance.
I thought it was.
Okay, let's move. Y'all ready to move on to education, experience, and skills? I see what you mean, Todd. It has a life of its own in terms of moving. Any comments on this section?
Which one? I'm sorry. Are you on education, experience, and skills?
Yes. If you notice, Sue, I have it pulled up on the screen if that's helpful.
Oh, no, I got it in front of me.
Sue, I think this is the place where you initially spoke to thought leadership and.
Yeah, I think this is the real place to speak to that. You know, I mean, education, experience are one thing, but just what kind of a person we're looking for. So I'll leave you wordsmiths to figure out a way to get commitment to racial equity and other equity justice initiatives somewhere in that. I totally agree that's missing. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I like the way Katherine said commitment and demonstrated effort or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyone else?
Todd, I know that just from prior conversations we've had that anytime that we need like a mediator, that stuff is contracted out of the office. Is that because like we usually don't hire someone that has mediation training, or like for other reasons?
I missed some of that because you were asking about whether or not this position should include training as a mediator.
Like if it's like skills, or maybe it could be like a plus that people have training as a mediator. I'm just asking as a question because I know that when we were talking about some other things, you had said that if we need mediation, that stuff, you guys usually get a third party person to come do it. And I was
it's actually the ordinance that we contract with a third party, a neutral third party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can just, no, hold that thought. So if I could just jump in really quickly here. So one of the things I've learned living in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is not uncommon to other states, is that to be called a mediator, right, is a certain type of certification and training. But what is unique to the Commonwealth of Virginia, so for example, we have an ombuds at the University of Virginia. They're not a trained mediator because they take mediation type training or facilitated resolution, conflict resolution training, but to be considered a mediator and to call it mediation or to perform a mediation in the Commonwealth of Virginia is a very specific thing, and it also requires a commitment to do certain things in Richmond for mediators for the courts. So I think what you could do would be to capture that concept, because I think it's a skill, right? It's a skill set to say it's preferred if you have some sort of, or maybe even something that we really want to tout as helpful is to have facilitated resolution, conflict resolution training in restorative justice. We could do like a such as, and someone might have a past experience, right? If they come from another state, or even in Virginia, someone might be a mediator. But I think if we broaden it, so I wouldn't lose the thought. I think it is helpful, but I understand, we know that, right, to Todd's point, if they're doing a mediation, right, that's probably why it's in the ordinance. There's a requirement to hire a trained official mediator, but that doesn't mean that those skills aren't something that we would be looking for that would be really helpful. And I think that Charlene obviously had.
Yeah.
Yeah. It brings me to a question I had on the skills thing. And this could probably be reworded to take care of conflict resolution skills. Right down there at the end of that, the next to last piece of the next to last sentence, recommends alternative solutions to difficult negotiations. I read that and I go, what the heck does that mean? And why is it said in that fashion? Because what I'm thinking is that's what you're getting at. The ability to resolve conflicts in a trained fashion, without calling themselves a mediator. Am I right?
Yeah, I think, Sue, I think you're 100% right. That's where we could tweak the language of this.
Yeah.
And I also think for those, because I wondered, the word alternative is often used like sort of instead of informal, for like informal resolution versus a formal complaint process, because informal can sound like, it just doesn't matter. So alternative tends to be a preferred or term or best practice. But yes, I think the alternative resolution can take many forms to resolve conflicts. And that could be restorative justice, facilitated resolution, referring out for mediation. Yes. So I think that would be a good spot to put it.
Right. Thank you.
And also on that point of just like people that are coming with that skill under the experience bucket, they said, there's the 3 years experience in civil human rights compliance, education, investigation, or administration. Do we want to, I know that we've like before have had discussions on, how do we become a FIFA and things like that. Would it be helpful to like, not that it necessarily needs to be, they need to come with this experience, but maybe it's like a plus if people are coming from a background of employment investigation training or housing discrimination investigating, things like that. Would that be helpful to have, or how do people feel about that?
I actually thought that covered pretty much everything. Experience in human rights compliance obviously brings into play the ways we deal with various discriminatory complaints. Like, do we send them to FIFA? Do we send them to Richmond for housing? I just felt that did cover pretty much anything in human rights compliance, however we deal with it. If that person has had experience in it, then they're going to know how to deal with the other things. I'm not saying it as well as I would like to say it.
Well, no, I have a question about how you all do these. I mean, the city, because for UVA, so we usually bucket it out what is required and what is preferred, right? So baseline requirements for the position, and then to what is that additional layer? And just looking at the experience, so if 3 years experience, so it's stated there, but as you were talking, Sue, it might be helpful in the human rights compliance. Like we have education sort of sitting out there by itself, but don't we need civil rights compliance in? And maybe we want a parenthetical that speaks to employment, housing, education, right? And or like we want it in certain facets of work.
To me, as long as the terminology FIPA is not, or EEOC is not added to experience, whatever additional words you want to use is okay. But I'm leery about that term FIPA. And I'd like to keep it out of this job description. That's just my personal opinion.
I think Catherine has the right approach to that. I understand where you're going. You said it much better than I said it.
Well, thank you, Sue. But I think Catherine is right with, making sure that, exactly what we need in this position will be covered.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, you're welcome. But thank you, Chantal, because what I made was a note, and I thank all of you. I mean, I think I'm taking notes for my own follow up as we go to work on the document a little bit more. And thank you again, Jeanette, for sort of keeping it up on the screen. But I think the concept of what Chantal is suggesting is that not that we say, right, it's kind of I mean, I personally don't know. I wish I did. It doesn't matter what our director, what their background is for FIPA certification. If it does, what does it take? I would imagine it's not just one individual. It's also something on the office staff as a whole or something. I don't know what's required. So to get that certification, I think it would be helpful to know those things. And then again, to the points that have been made, we're not citing FIPA, we're not citing EEOC, we're just saying kind of some of the things that would be preferred that would be the nuts and bolts that could get us to that, right? So if there is something, then we could kind of put it in there. So anyway, I made a note to follow up to research what, and Todd may well know that, I'm sure he does.
I have some understanding of it. I think the best bet would be to, also collaborate with the city attorney's office if we wanted to pursue that. But I don't think that, from what I understand, it's right now our main limiter is just having enough staff to be considered for anything like that. So I don't know that you would have to actually include it in the job description.
So how many staff do you need, Todd? Is 2 enough? No, because it wasn't enough before, right? Do you need more? Is it 3? Should we be asking for more?
It's a very good question. I think, from what Charlene was saying before, she was aiming for a team of 3 people. But, I think at a minimum, to do things like, process more employment discrimination complaints, we'd need either additional staff or the ability to contract investigators to take on additional cases. And I think it could go either way, but you certainly need a director, because the challenge right now, and just to be brief about it, but for example, the investigation that I just completed, there was no one to serve as the person to render a decision. We were going to pass that to the commission, but the city attorney's office said that the commission can only serve as an appellate body. And so right now we're even stuck in the things that we have jurisdiction over, we can't even effectively handle those.
Yeah.
That's a really good point when we talk about timeline, to bring up that there are pending cases that are waiting. One thing I was wondering about this, and I'm noticing the time, it's around 7:30, so we'll want to move on. We have 2 sections left. Is 3 years seems really small to me, especially if we want to recommend that it be moved to a director. I was thinking 5 at a minimum. I'm wondering if anyone else had thoughts on that.
I had somewhat the same notion. I'm going 3 years, really? But maybe 3 years is enough for a director, but it certainly is not enough for a manager from my perspective.
You mean the other way around? 3 years might be enough for a manager, but not a director.
Or the manager, but not a
Yeah.
director, if we're looking to get a real director. Yeah.
I was a little surprised to see the 3 years also, because I would think that it would, I just think about how many years Charlene had in this kind of work, one way or the other. And I think a 3-year is not saying a whole lot. I think it should be more.
I wonder if, and I've seen it in other job descriptions and so forth. Basically, this is going to be used to a certain extent as a request for, it's going to go out asking people to apply. What, just use the word a minimum of whatever.
That sounds good, Sue.
I mean, when I see a minimum of, it tells me that that's my bottom line. it's whereas this just says, okay, 3 years you're in. That's just
I think
how
the other thing is, from an equity perspective, right? When you're creating and crafting a position description, you want to make sure that it's tied to a reason, right? You're not setting a barrier that has no basis, right, to applicants. So with all that said, I agree, like a director level, you could write it as a minimum of 5 years, which signals to people that there's likely a preference for someone who has a pretty significant body of experience. Or you can also add words in substantial experience, including a minimum of, right? But I think that is definitely there. We have some room there. And I think it's warranted. Like in this situation, it's not like we're saying, we're requiring a college degree for a certain type of job that someone with experience could do. And if we're worried about the barrier, that's also a way you could say, I think we have, or it's equivalent, right? A minimum of 5 years in this, or some way to demonstrate equivalency, which leaves the door open to some extraordinary candidate that comes along that maybe doesn't check all the boxes that we've tried to thoughtfully put in place.
Agree.
Anyone have opposed to those ideas? Okay. You feel comfortable moving on to organization competencies?
Both this organizational competencies and the job family competencies, I read them and I thought, this is all internal. and it's something that the supervisor of this person would be, or operational oversight, the manager or assistant city manager would be more concerned about than me. And so I decided, I read it and I just said, well, I'm not dealing with that. This is an internal sort of thing that they're looking for internally and planning to do internally, and I'm not dealing with it. Sorry.
It could be that that's what these sections are focused on, but I noticed both here and above, again, the lack of reference to community, to working in diverse communities, to understanding race relations and the impact of inequities. There wasn't really anything about those in all three of these sections.
That's because it's internal. It's relating to people within city government.
And it's also a managerial job description. Yeah. I mean, these are management functions. So if we want to elevate it, then we would be adding to these. It's not that these aren't important, but they're not, there's other stuff that needs to be put in, which I think is a pretty, I know we all saw this before, but I think we're looking at it with fresh eyes. Yeah. So I think it's something that a Google Doc effort is really warranted, because other than just gathering, as you were doing quite effectively, Jeanette, themes that we have in response.
Yeah, I think those things actually would belong in essential responsibilities and duties, rather than trying to throw them into. You're right, Catherine. These are managerial things. They're not They're not organizational things that the community needs to worry about. Their managers, their supervisors need to worry about whether they're doing them, that person is doing them correctly.
Todd, do you think we could request an example of a director job position so that we could see the language that they use at that level? Because I'm sure it's I would expect that the city has very consistent language for different levels.
Certainly. I was just thinking about maybe I could ask, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, I think she was just moving.
What's that?
Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, okay, my connection is a little bit bad, I apologize. So I can certainly request another example. I wonder if perhaps like the Director of Human Services would be a good sort of maybe parallel kind of level job.
I think, Catherine, I don't know if you were suggesting this, but I think it would be a great idea to sort of pause at this place, take this feedback, create a Google document, and have a job description, the Director of Human Services to refer to, and then continue to work on this as a next step as a team. And then another action item would be to reach out to City Council and to the city manager to schedule that meeting.
That's exactly what I was suggesting. And I thought maybe time-wise, because again, I'm a deadline person because I have a lot of stuff, as we all do, going on. You know, when are we meeting before the meeting next week? It would be helpful to have a new draft that the full commission could weigh in on.
Great. So if we're able to get this up tomorrow in a Google Doc that we could all look at, people can perhaps make comments through Wednesday, through Wednesday by noon, and we could pull something together Wednesday afternoon to share for our meeting on Thursday. Does that sound okay? All right, so I can take on pulling together people's comments Wednesday afternoon. Does that work, Todd, with the protocol?
Yeah, certainly I will, let's see. So in terms of the public notice and material packet, like the agenda packet, I'll actually be posting that tomorrow or before noon tomorrow. So if we do have materials that you want to include for the meeting, they wouldn't be posted on the public notice thing. Does that make sense?
Is that okay if it's not included?
It's a good question. I think we want to include it in the agenda packet. I can ask a bit more from Kina and Brian about that, whether it matters if we have some late additional materials to the agenda packet.
Okay. All right. If everyone's comfortable moving on to the next step, we have matters by the public next. Oh, I think we have one attendee, so I'm not sure if there's any, but any other last comments before we move on? Thanks everyone for your great feedback and the nitty-gritty work of looking at each piece of it. Okay, matters by the public. Carrie Ann, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but are you interested in making any comments? No open questions? Okay. Commission response to matters by the public? Anyone else want to add final comments before we close?
Jeanette, could you just, do you mind summing up what our action?
Our next steps. So the next step is that Jeanette will draft a note to City Council for Chantel to send as soon as possible, requesting a meeting. Todd, is it something I would do, or you would post a Google Doc that the Human Rights Commission can all add to?
Good question. Whichever you prefer.
So we can do it. It doesn't have to be accessible to the public. We can do something
as far as I know, if you're just working on a document together, I think that's, yeah, I think that can be internal.
Okay, so I will post tomorrow. Jeanette will post a document of the job description with comments from today that people can continue to add to. All commissioners will be encouraged to add to it by noon on Wednesday, of next Wednesday, which is the 17th. And then that afternoon, I'll pull together an updated document for our review at the commission's meeting on the 18th. Did I get everything?
I'm going to work on the draft Phoebe did on a statement, a potential statement from the HRC in response to recent events. At least that's what I understood it to be. I know
Yeah.
the draft is a little, yeah, that kind of was my angle. And my goal, probably not tonight, Chantel, but I'll have something to you tomorrow.
Awesome.
And the link to that is in the chat if you're able to copy that, Chantel.
Yeah.
To add for everyone to review that.
Are we?
Yeah, it might make sense. You can probably do both drafts, Chantel, when you have them, or just start or send out the most current draft. Because I guess Phoebe started it and then only sent it. I didn't realize it didn't go to everybody. But maybe wait for the draft tomorrow and then send it to everybody. And then we all have whatever's, you have it right now in the chat.
Okay, so don't send out the draft.
Well, you can. I think it's in the Google Doc now. Everybody should have it, right? Is it in?
Everybody should have it because it is in the
Everybody
Google.
has it. It's in Google. Yep. Yep. There it is. Perfect. Yep.
And Jeanette, are you also sending out the draft agenda? So is that the joint session agenda with City Council? Is that going to be part of the email?
I can add that. Do you want me to like?
It doesn't need to be. I was just like asking.
That would be a good idea to add it in as a Google Doc for people to comment on. So yes, I can do that. There's 3 things I'm doing, right?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you each for spending your evening together with this. And I guess, Chantel, are we ready to adjourn?
You're chairing this meeting, Jeanette.
I mean, because you're taking notes. Did you have anything else you needed for the vote?
Oh yeah, no, I took some rough notes. I feel like there was a lot of discussion and I did not capture all of that, but
It's recorded. We could always fill in. Okay, I officially adjourned this meeting and thank you all for coming and sharing. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.
42 p.m.
Oops. Bye.